The first layout started in December of 2021. I envisioned 2 loops for 2 DC trains. The lower loop used the train set from the Christmas tree train used for decades. I tried to add a second train on an inverted figure 8 on the higher level. This idea was abandoned due to my inability to work out the non-standard track connections, which led to Plan 2. Plan 2 kept it simple with 2 separate DC loops. The lower level would house the village and operate a passenger loop. The top level would consist of a farm and factory for a freight loop. As scenery work progressed, I stumbled upon YouTube as a valuable modeling resource. One YouTube video explained how to cut track to fill a non-standard space. In January of 2022, Plan 3 quickly emerged with no impact on scenery development to that point. In my learning journey, I came repeatedly across the term DCC, eventually figuring out what that meant, and decided the advantages were persuasive. The investment to run DCC trains on the top level occurred in March. Note the 2 DCC trains on the top double loop. While a bit tight, requiring careful attention, 2 trains can run at the same time on the top. The DCC starter set included a turnout, which was placed at the Tesla battery factory. In addition, the original DC steam locomotive that ran on the bottom loop was retired and replaced with the newer DC diesel from the top loop. With the incorporation of the turnout, I began learning more about operations and what that might mean for a model railroad. A friend, viewing the layout in the spring of 2022, suggested I integrate the 2 loops. I pointed out the challenges of the grades involved, especially given that the top level was already 5 inches higher than the lower level. But, now intrigued, I began investigating grades on YouTube. I initially thought the space available would not allow integration with usable grades. I considered a number of approaches, but the only one that made sense was to lower the upper half of the layout, which brought the grades into a 2.5% range. The change also required the addition of a small extension on the right side to make connections between the loops. All of this change necessitated some serious destruction to the in-progress scenery. After considerable effort, the 2 DC loops became one large integrated DCC loop with an over-under track segment noted by the arrow. The new layout is now a large figure 8 with an additional inverted figure 8. The bottom of the 8 has a 2.5% grade in order to pass over the track from the top of the 8. The inverted figure 8 uses a crossover track. The downgrade occurs in 2 separate areas with a 2.5% decline and a short 3.4% decline. DCC and integration allowed for a passenger train and a freight train to run at the same time and for both to reach all locations on the layout. My research into operations and my understanding about what this meant and how it worked grew considerably during this time. I also learned about modeling a transportation system. I created a simple timetable for the trains to run on. The integrated layout could not function as a transportation system as it had nowhere to get raw materials and no place to take finished product. Passengers could move around a bit between 2 stations, but that was all. The move to DCC, the integration of the 2 separate ovals, and consideration for building a model transportation system with operations led to a new concept and the start of a 6th stage of planning. I began planning an interchange for a short line. The expansion would allow for the formation of the Pitcher Short Line Railroad with an interchange at Grand Junction. At the Grand Junction interchange, raw materials could arrive for delivery and processed goods could be sent to markets. I started the work in June of 2022. The interchange extension required some limited destruction of existing scenery, plus considerable new construction. The new track work included 2 turnouts, one for the passenger interchange and one for the freight interchange. When completed, it will include the short line office, a maintenance and repair shop, plus the short line passenger platform connected to the much larger Grand Junction terminal. The new scenery will also include a street of merchant shops and a warehouse. I certainly could have gotten to this point with more learning and better planning at the beginning before doing any work, with less waste of time and material. But part of the challenge for the beginner is not knowing what questions to ask in the early stages. In some cases, the work pushed the learning. Had I waited until all of these various concepts had percolated through my mind, I would just now be getting started with construction.